Alright, in this video I'm going to show you how to use submixes to greatly improve the quality of your mixes. Submixes are basically where you send multiple tracks, like individual tracks, like here I've got guitar tracks, and they're being grouped together into a guitar group here. And in this instance we've got quite a few submixes. So we've got guitar and bass going to strings here, and then we've got guitar, bass, and drums going to this instrument submix here, and then so the strings is going into the instruments here. So I'll show you what I'm doing with each of them in order to make the mix as big and punchy as possible, in order to help like increase loudness and stuff like that. So first, just on the guitars themselves, we're just doing EQ. So rather than EQing them separately, there's no need because they're the same amp and everything. So we're just EQing them, boosting a bit lower and boosting a bit higher, and cutting out some nonsense. And I'll play the section so you can just hear. So you hear that sounds pretty big. Yeah, and a lot of that is to do with the way I've used submixes. So I'll play just the guitars by themselves, and I'll play you the EQ just so you can hear what it's doing. This is just rolling off like subs. You don't have to worry about that. I'll play this EQ. Just gives it more bite. This bass is program bass, but I've just like turned it all into audio now. It sounds like this. So it's just normal bass, and then together on the strings channel, this is what I'm doing on the string submix. So all there is a sidechain compressor from the kick. That's it, and that just ducks the volume by like a tiny bit just when the kick's hit. Yeah, 3 dB, but it's so fast you barely even notice. You can hear it when I solo it like that, like it sounds a bit like strange. But when I play, if I just played that and the kick solo together, it just helps the kick like poke through the mix a bit. So that's all I'm doing on the guitars and bass submix, and then that's going into the instrument submix. Actually, I'll go to drums first because drums are like the next layer. So the way I like to think about them is like layers. So we go small, which is like, for example, just guitars, and then the next layer after that is guitars and bass, and the next layer after that might be all the instruments. So before we go into all the instruments, let's just talk about the drums. They're just being grouped here, and I've got compressor, which gives them a bit of like movement. I'll show you that. That's off. So you can hear it just like brings it a bit of like dynamic movement there. Just a clipper clips that snare quite a bit, and then an EQ that's not actually doing anything. I don't know why that's there, but it is. So next we got the instrument submix. So this is just basically everything because there's nothing else apart from guitars, bass, drums. So I'll show you what the instrument submix is doing. This is where like a lot of the loudness comes from. So this SSL comp, this gives it quite a lot of movement. I'll play it on and off, and you can hear what it does. This is off, on. So you'll notice how the snares are like they appear to be way punchier, even though the level of them is actually about the same. They just like cut through a bunch more, and that's because of the compressor just doing its thing. So that allows you to like make it louder without decreasing the punchiness of your mix. So if you had like a limiter after that, which I haven't got here, but if you did, that would make the mix sound really loud and punchy without losing any clarity in the transients there. So that's like a metal example. I've got a more like EDM example here, and I can show you what I'm doing here. So here I've got this like synthy thing. I'll play it to you. I'll skip ahead. Cool. So, I mean, you can see that already. I've got a bunch of like sidechain stuff going on all these synths, but all these synths are being routed to this synth submix. And here I'll play them just on their own. So basically everything is going there apart from drums. And I've got a bit crush thing, which is like the little noise effect you heard. Decapitator, just a bunch of distortion, but not that much, to be honest. It can have a bunch of distortion, but I don't have it set very high. You can see the needle move. I'll turn it off. It's very similar, barely doing anything. And then I've got a limiter here. I don't even know if that's kicking in right now. Barely. Without decapitator, I think it does. Yeah, it kicks in a little bit more because decapitator just like shaves off a bit of the peaks there. And then I got drums. Similar thing to with the metal example. Compressor, clipper. These are already really processed samples, so the clipper's barely doing anything because they're already like clipped and limited and distorted and everything. And then that's going into instrument submix. Similar thing. I've got the SSL comp set a bit differently. Slower release time because like the transients are way further apart than in a metal example, so I can afford to have the release a bit longer, and you can listen to that. Without. With. Just exaggerates that like pumping effect that you get with sidechain kick stuff and EDM. And then that's going into a frontier limiter, which is like, I don't know what you call it, self-adaptive limiter it calls itself, but it's like not really a limiter, it's just, I don't know. I've shown it earlier on my channel. It makes things sound nice and loud, so I use it. I'll show what it does. I've tried to level match it, so you can't really see it doing much, but if I looked at the meter, I think the meter doesn't move as much with it on. If I go, it's this one here, yeah, instrument. With it on, it's moving about that much. You see it jumps up and down a bit more with the limiter off, but you barely hear any audible difference, so that gives you a bit more headroom. And yeah, so we're using the same sort of layers concept. So we've got the synths as one part of the layer, drums, and then they're being brought together into the instrument submix. So yeah, you can see a lot of what I'm doing is just like dynamics processing. Basically, it's just like limiting, compression, and the more stages of that you have, the louder you can make your mixes generally without them being sacrificed. You see I use a lot of clipping. I think I've talked about clipping in the past, but clipping like really helps bring loudness because especially if it's just used on transients, you can use clipping to really raise the volume of a mix without affecting the sound basically at all. Until you start getting to like, I don't know, guitars or pianos or something that's not just transient information, then a clipper starts to suffer and you need to use a limiter instead. But that's that. I'm done. All right, if that helps, let me know. Thank you.